Welcome to the Man Cave Podcast with Dan Casper.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee, Toyson Ford. Also check out the Swag Cave, brought to you by Resonance Branding Company. That link to do a little shopping is in the podcast description. All right, so check that out. On this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, we're wrapping up our training camp, Packers training camp storyline series, because the next time we do a podcast, training camp will have started, believe it or not. So we're going to wrap up our series with this episode, and let's start off talking a little bit about the Packers rookies. And let's start off with, well, the first-round pick, the offensive lineman, Mr. Morgan. Morgan being the first-round pick, is he going to be able to win a starting job? Is he going to get a shot? Is he going to get a chance? Is that left tackle position really open? Is it really a competition going up against Rasheed Walker? You know, we'll find out once camp opens and once practice goes. We'll see if Morgan gets some reps with the ones and such. You know, I think the big determinant in all this, too, is going to be when Zach Tom's able to come back and practice, because with him out there, that's a starter missing. So Morgan's going to get some reps, I would assume, maybe at some other positions such. But, you know, Will Morgan, eventually he's going to be a starter, right? He's a first-round pick, 25th overall. He will be a starter. The question is, will it be this year, in his rookie year? And how serious of a battle is it between him and Walker for left tackle? And again, I know a lot of the draft people out there, draft experts leading up to the draft, thought he would be better suited maybe moving inside as a guard. Could he play a little right tackle? But Zach Tom's over there. It seems like Zach Tom wants to stay at right tackle. So I don't know, like, going back to the question, will Morgan have the biggest impact? Probably not. I think there's a lot of uncertainty surrounding it. I think, you know, now if it's a similar situation to Brian Bulaga, then maybe it's just I'm not that confident that Morgan's going to open up as a starter this year. You know, I think you factor in Sean Ryan, Surveyor Sam's guy. Sean Ryan, is he going to get an opportunity to win that job at right guard? Saw him getting some snaps last year with the unit, subbing in and out a little bit with John Runyon Jr. over there. So is Sean Ryan going to be able to take that step again this year and maybe win that job? I mean, there's a ton of uncertainty surrounding here with where Morgan's going to play. I don't really know where Morgan's going to play in his rookie year yet. And that's why I think, going back to one of the other storylines that we had, the offensive line to me is probably the biggest position battle group to watch throughout training camp. I look at, though, the next three picks. If I had to go out there and say, or make a prediction of the rookies who are going to have the biggest impacts, I'm looking at probably the next three picks here as guys who I think could not only be starters but get a ton of playing time on the offensive and defensive side over there. So those being Edgerrin Cooper and Javon Bullard and Marshawn Lloyd. Probably the first two. You know, probably the two second-round picks. Lloyd, again, it goes back to our conversation with Josh Jacobs. How much of an opportunity is Lloyd going to get? Are they going to kind of use Jacobs as a bell cow type of back? So will that cut reps for Lloyd in his rookie season or such? But I think we're going to see him out on the field. We're going to see him get some opportunities this year. It's just, will he, you know, how much opportunity will he get? Because I think we're going to see a ton of Jacobs this year. So I'm looking at these two defensive guys between Edgerrin Cooper and Javon Bullard. And I might go Cooper if I had to pick one. to answer the question of the rookie who's going to have the biggest impact right away. And to me, when I look at this rookie class, I think there's opportunities for a lot of these guys to be contributors, whether it's special teams or maybe it's on some defensive play, because and that's why it's a storyline for me, the impact of these rookies on this ball club. Javon's probably going to be, the starting safety next to Xavier McKinney. Cooper probably going to be the other linebacker with Quay Walker. Then you throw Isaiah McDuffie in there. Marshawn Lloyd's probably going to be the backup running back, going to be the change of pace running back. And then I look at the next guys here. Hopper, the linebacker from Missouri, and the next safety, Evan Williams from Oregon. Those are guys that I think maybe could have an immediate impact on special teams right away. And it just felt like, going back to when those guys were selected, that are those picks with the new special teams rules in mind? Are those picks, were they made with the new rules in mind? Now Hopper is like a speedy linebacker. The only thing is that he needs to improve on his field vision, instincts, and such, like diagnosing plays and that. But he's got some insane athletic traits, and that's where, he's probably going to get an opportunity right away on special teams to be an impact player. But then you add in Evan Williams. I mean, Packers really loaded up on the depth of their safety position. There's one that I'm going to be bringing up here in just a little bit here too, who I think could be a sneaky player. But you add in Evan Williams too. Again, it just seemed like he was a pick to kind of help bolster special teams. And it's not to say he won't, get on the field or anything like that when it comes to the defensive play there. But, he's an aggressive safety. You look at it and he's like, well, he's 5'11" and such. He's maybe not the biggest guy, but I remember going through his draft stuff when he was picked, and there was people like, he kind of plays with a mindset of a linebacker a little bit. Good at stopping the run. And then you got Oladapo from Oregon State, who is your more typical strong safety type of role out there. I think Jacob Monk, the offensive lineman, the versatile offensive lineman from Duke, he's going to get opportunities. He may be the future starting center for this team. And then I think early runnings here for our Lindsey Pipkins Memorial Honorable, whatever. What do we call it? Lindsey Pipkins player to watch when it comes to training camp and preseasons, Kalen King. Last year I had Carrington Valentine as my pick. Before training camp started, I might go corner again with Kalen King from Penn State, the last pick that the Packers had in this draft. 255 overall. And maybe I'm reading a little too much into it, because there was talk that if he was in the draft the year before, he could have been a first-round pick. You had, I think it was Jaden Reed that said there's no way he's a seventh-round pick. Bill Belichick was singing his praise a little bit too. Just kind of nonchalantly. I think they were talking, it was the first round of the draft coverage, and they were doing some Marvin Harrison Jr. filming, and Kalen King was on there, and Belichick just kind of casually said, and that's a really good corner over there. So I think Kalen King could maybe be that Carrington Valentine from last year. So I guess what I'm trying to say, the impact of the rookies overall, I think there's going to be guys that are going to get opportunities. I think you're going to see a lot of these guys. I'm intrigued with this draft class overall, and I think a lot of you, if we go back to when we were talking about the draft class after it was all said and done in April, there was a lot of enthusiasm. There was a lot of excitement with this class, and I think a lot of you thought, hey, this is a really intriguing class. You really like what Goody did, and you really like about the potential of some of these guys. And I think there is that opportunity for a lot of these guys to get some play time, whether it's on special teams, whether it's on the defensive side or offensive side right away. But there's chances for these guys, I think, to have an impact on this team. And will they take that opportunity? Will Edgerrin Cooper be a force on the defensive side. We've heard nothing but positive stuff. We've heard great stuff from Quay Walker. We've heard about, how fast he is and how athletic he is. You got Bullard next to Xavier McKinney and such. I mean, there's excitement surrounding some of these rookies. The main question is just going to be heading into training camp and throughout training camp and preseason is how quick can they get acclimated to the NFL game? How quickly can they adjust to the game plans, the playbook, and can they take advantage of their opportunities? I'm excited to watch these guys in training camp. This is the reason why, or this is one of the reasons why I enjoy preseason football too. I know I'm in the minority on this, is to see guys like Edgerrin Cooper, Javon Bullard, Marshawn Lloyd, Oladapo, Kalen King, those guys get on the field because we get excited. We're intrigued after they get drafted. Like, oh yeah, these are going to be a good pick, great pick in the 6th round, 7th round. Now we get to see if our thoughts kind of, all right, it's our first glimpse of them in a Packers uniform to see if they play out. That's why I like preseason football, to see these young guys, to get for them to get a chance, for them to get an opportunity. That's why I enjoy it, seeing these guys trying to accomplish a dream that a lot of us would have probably as kids loved to have done. And these are guys that are close to accomplishing their dreams. I mean, how do you not get emotional about sports, right? And we haven't even talked about, maybe some of the undrafted guys that are coming in here. And I know they don't get a lot of fanfare. They don't get a lot of fanfare when it comes to, the rookies and such. And maybe for a lot of us, we don't know a whole lot about them. We don't know who they are. But, when you're looking at those undrafted guys too. And remember, Green Bay didn't have a ton of roster spots open. So it wasn't like, the Chargers had 20-some undrafted, and the Packers, over the years have brought in a good-sized group of undrafted players because it always felt like, okay, maybe one or two was going to get in there. They just didn't have a lot of roster spots open. I mean, you do got a Badger over there. You want a long snapper. Remember, Packers picked up the Badger long snapper, Peter Bowden. Other guys maybe to kind of pay attention to. Raylan Goforth, linebacker out of Washington. He's a little bit of a smaller one. Howard, the running back from Elkhorn State. Jarvian Howard. Messiah Swinson, tight end from Arizona State. That dude is huge. 6'8", 6'8", 260 pounds. We've got Trent Jones, the tackle from Michigan. Donovan Jennings, tackle from South Florida. James Esther, defensive tackle from Northern Illinois. And then Rodney Matthews, defensive tackle from Ohio, too. So, again, not a big group, but Green Bay historically gives chances to these guys to make an impression. So, one of the other storylines heading into training camp, how is watching this rookie class, getting a glimpse of some of these guys, because we know some of those dudes are going to get a chance, and some of those guys are going to be asked to be starters or get a ton of playing time right away. Can they be impact rookies? Can they be impact rookies right away? And I think for maybe some Packers fans, I'm trying to, let me bring up the Packers rookie draft classes over the years here too, because I think one of the gripes or complaints from Packers fans over the years when it comes to their draft picks has been how many of them have maybe been contributors right away or big time contributors right away in their rookie seasons. Lucas Van Ness last year, first round pick, maybe not as much. Jane Reed, yes. Got to see those glimpses of Luke Musgrave and Tucker Kraft, right? 2022 when they had they had 2 first-round picks, Quay Walker racked up a lot of stats, but I think there was some people kind of like, okay, but was it, I think the bar was set pretty high for Quay Walker for being a first-round linebacker that maybe it didn't reach that level for a lot of people. They wanted a game-changing, and maybe they didn't quite see that from Quay Walker. Devontae Wyatt, no. Didn't get it after his rookie year. This is why the third year is big for him. You had Christian Watson and Romeo Doubs that year too. Zach Tom was a part of that 2022 class. Eric Stokes, 2021. Had a solid rookie season. Did it blow anybody out of the water, though, where he was like rookie of the year? No. Jordan Love, we didn't see. A.J. Dillon was the third running back in 2020. 2019, Rashawn Gary was kind of like Lucas Van Ness, Darnell Savage. You had Elton Jenkins in the second round. Then you go back to Jair in 2018, probably the last first-round pick. Is it fair to say Jair was the last first-round pick to add a really breakout rookie year? Is that fair to say? 2017, they didn't have one. We don't need to rehash that. Then 2016 was Kenny Clark. So there's a lot of intrigue and there's a lot of excitement for this rookie class this year, but I think maybe for some Packers fans are like, okay, been down this road before, prove it now. But for this team to hit the goal of winning a Super Bowl, going to the Super Bowl, winning the Super Bowl, winning the division, you're going to need some of these rookies to be big-time contributors, no question about it. So, next I want to talk about Josh Jacobs, the new running back for the Green and Gold. And I know mixed, I don't know if it'd be mixed feelings, but there's still a few, missing out on Aaron Jones. Would rather maybe have Aaron Jones on this roster, or I think best of both worlds would love to have Jacobs and Aaron Jones both on the roster there too. But go back to that opening day of free agency, legal tampering period, whatever the heck we're calling it these days, when it was reported that the Packers were going to sign Jacobs, and you're thinking, oh boy, Jacobs and Aaron Jones together in the backfield, and then shortly after it was announced that Aaron Jones would be released. So, no question, Aaron Jones, I think, is for a lot of people one of their favorite Packers of all times. And as somebody who's been lucky to interview him a few times, what you hear on TV is exactly what he is in person and such. Very courteous, yes sir, no sir, all that stuff. And he's definitely one of my favorite Packers of all time. And it's gonna hurt seeing him in that purple across the border. Let's not kid ourselves. It's going to hurt. And I thought he was such a pivotal player last year in terms of his leadership with those young receivers, with those youngsters. We saw it. And for the last couple of years, too, the thing that really stood out to me about Aaron Jones wasn't just the play, but it was that leadership that probably doesn't get talked about enough. Because I remember... it was 2 years ago. I think it was like mini camp or OTAs or whatever it was when veterans were excused. He didn't go. He went to practice. He practiced with the young guys. This is a running back, a guy who's already got a big contract. And instead of taking another day off or a couple days off, he stayed and practiced with the young guys. And it was stuff like that. And I'm just like, I love that. I love that guy. And I love what he's about. So it's going to be a huge loss from that and that leadership within that locker room, on that sideline. It's going to be up for others like Jordan Love, Xavier McKinney, Preston Smith, Kenny Clark, Jair, those type of guys to take it up another notch in their leadership. And one of those guys, too, that I think is attempting to do that is Josh Jacobs. And Josh Jacobs recognizes that. He's talked about that. He's talked about needing to be a leader on this team, especially on a younger offense. And, for the last couple of years, we've seen a running back situation. Yes, Aaron Jones has been the number one guy. But we've also seen situations where A.J. Dillon has come in, and A.J. Dillon's had a good couple of years. But it was kind of like, okay, one drive or, the first couple drives is going to be Aaron Jones, and then one drive it's going to be all A.J. Dillon, and you're kind of doing a little mixing and matching with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon, two completely different styles of running backs. You got Aaron Jones as the scat back speed guy, you got A.J. Dillon as that bruiser. Both fairly effective in the passing game. Now you got Jacobs, who I think changes the running game, changes the running attack for the Packers, changes the game plan in terms of the running game plan for the green and gold. I think you're going to see maybe a little bit more of a bell cow option where he's not going to be taken off the field as much as maybe Aaron Jones was. You're not going to see as much mixing and matching when it comes to Josh Jacobs. You're going to see a guy that's going to be on the field, I think, quite a bit. And you'll look at the numbers. There's that number, like how many, like he's got over 1,000 yards rushing on first down alone. This is where I think he is going to have a huge impact within the offense is those early downs, is those first downs. When you throw numbers out there like that, and you throw out the success that he has on first downs, that is a play caller's dream when you want to run a lot of play action and you've got some receiving threats. To have that type of running back that has that amount of success on first downs is just, you've got to be salivating at the mouth if you're Matt LaFleur or any play caller at that thought. So that's where I think he's going to have a huge impact on this team. The early downs. We know he's a bigger back, but he's kind of, Josh Jacobs to me is kind of like a mold in between A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. It's like if those two like morphed into each other, I think you get a version of like a Josh Jacobs that kind of comes out of that. You mold those two clay models into it, and maybe it out pops a Josh Jacobs type of player. Now I know there's some questions about injuries, health, production-wise. Last year he played 13 games. But, I mean, every year that he's been in the league since 2019, he's played double-digit games, 13, 15, 15, 17, 13. And that 2022 season was definitely his career year, rushing for over 1,600 yards. But I think what also is going to help benefit a guy like Josh Jacobs is going to be the offense that he's in with Jordan Love, with those playmaking, with those receivers, with those tight ends. I think a lot of the times, with the Raiders, he was the key. He was the focus. And last year, you're looking at like, oh, okay, Devontae, last couple of years, Devontae Adams and such. The thing that was missing, though, was a quarterback. Was the threat of a really good quarterback, a consistent quarterback. So, yes, on paper, having a Devontae Adams and maybe a Hunter Renfrow and a Josh Jacobs, you had offensive weapons, skill position players. But you didn't have the threat of a consistently good quarterback to take advantage of that. That's different in Green Bay. It's going to be, I think the biggest thing to me, and maybe one of the biggest question marks heading into the season when it comes to Josh Jacobs, and now this running game, I mean, you got to throw in A.J. Dillon, you got to throw in, Marshawn Lloyd, the rookie, and I'll be curious to see how many reps they give the rookie when it gets to the regular season and such. Because remember, was it LaFleur's first year, second year? They had Aaron Jones, they had Jamal Williams, and they had A.J. Dillon, and then you have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae, and it's like, where's the ball going to go? Who's going to get the ball? Is there enough to share around? So it'll be curious to see how they try to incorporate the rookie, but also what's A.J. Dillon's role within this system? Are they going to continue to have him at running back? Could we see that hybrid H-back, fullback type of role that there's some speculation out there? But I feel like when it comes to Jacobs, he's going to be more of that typical every down running back. You're going to see him get in there. I mean, you look at, his rushing attempts every single year. He's gone from 242 his rookie year, 273, 217, 340 in that 2022 season, and 233 last year. He's going to be involved in the passing game. He's going to be a receiver. He's a guy that can give you multiple different options out there, and I think he can have a special year. But I think the biggest question mark I'll have is to see what Matt LaFleur, what's that game plan like? Are they really going to use him as a bell cow type of player, as a 3-down running back, or are they still going to try to do something similar to what they did with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. Maybe it's a couple drives with Jacobs, then maybe they throw in Dillon, or maybe they throw in the rookie and such. But how much usage are they going to have for Josh Jacobs? And do they change their scheme up a little bit with how they want to come about with their running attack? Do they have a different type of philosophy here a little? You know what I mean? So, but I'm excited to see Jacobs within this offense, with Jordan Love, with those receivers. Best case scenario with everything is going to be, it's like pick your poison if you're an opposing defense. Do you want to load the box up and try to stop the run? Do you want to have a lighter box because you're concerned about the passing game? That's the situation you want to be in if you're in an offense. You want to dictate. You want to be the one that dictates. And that's what, again, I think Matt LaFleur did a fantastic job at the end of last year. During that stretch, during that run, he had his offense one step ahead of the defense. He was consistently one step ahead of the opposing defensive play caller. It just felt like he was 1, 2, 3 steps way ahead, and whenever that defense corner is trying to catch up, and no, you can't catch him. He was such in a groove, and now you add in a playmaker, a unique skill set of a Josh Jacobs within this offense. I think now if you're Matt LaFleur or any offensive play caller, when you have this, you got to be licking your chops. You're going to be able to dictate what you want to do on offense. Load up the box. All right, we'll have some one-on-one action with our pass catchers. Going to go with a light box. All right, good luck against Josh Jacobs. So I'm excited to see. I think the biggest question for me is going to be, do they change how they've done it the last few years in terms of, spreading out some of the reps with their running attack? Do they still try to give some reps to A.J. Dillon? How many reps do they give to the rookie? Or is it going to be, it's Josh Jacobs 3 out of 4 times every time? Is it going to be more of that typical bell cow operation over there? That, to me, is probably one of the biggest things to kind of keep an eye on once we get to training camp and regular season. Because I don't see Josh Jacobs playing in the preseason. I could be wrong, but, we'll see. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more after these quick words. Summer is in full swing. Are you stocked up and prepared? With the kids staying home this summer, family vacations planned, and ball games to go to, your pantries and cupboards are probably looking a bit bare these days. Save money and stock up this summer by doing your shopping at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire. Not only will you be able to get the best deals on the best items in the area, you can do some extra savings with Hy-Vee's fuel perks. Save money on groceries and gas. That's a win-win situation. So what are you waiting for? Get to shopping at Hy-Vee in Eau Claire today. We're getting set for another busy travel season, vacations, taking our kids to all their games and activities, and you need a proper vehicle to get you to where you're going, and safely. That's where Toyson Ford can help you. Toyson Ford will go the extra mile to provide you with compelling options for new and used car shopping. They will gladly work with you on financing no matter what your budget may be. They're committed to giving drivers across the Chippewa Valley the best in customer service. Check them out for yourself. Visit Toyson Ford in Chippewa Falls today and check out their website, toysonford.net. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about Jordan Love as our next storyline. It was reported by Bill Huber. Bill's fantastic over there that Jordan Love will be at training camp, even if he doesn't have a contract in place and such. Which I don't think is a big surprise to anybody. But I mean, I get it to an extent. Why there was some chat out there? Would he show up? Would he not? And that, but and that's kind of where we're going to wrap up our top storylines heading into this one. I was kind of saving this one to see if we were going to get a contract extension in time or not. But Jordan Love. I mean, when we look at some of the overall, we've touched on double-digit storylines heading into camp this year. And honestly, we maybe even missed a couple of the top ones over there. But the defense and Jordan Love, to me, are the top two. If I had to rank them, Jeff Hafley / defense, new defensive coordinator, and Jordan Love are the top two storylines heading into training camp for the Packers for me this year. I know it's just practice, and I know at times it is very hard sometimes to get a good feel, to get a good grasp of how things are going or what things look like when it's just in shorts or it's not a full-on, padded practice, full-on game and that. But this is, obviously last year was a big year for Jordan Love, taking the helm from Aaron Rodgers. Essentially had a year to prove himself. And it started off a little slow. I mean, he had some up. I mean, the Bears game to open up had some good moments. He had some really good moments. The comeback victory against the Saints in the early part of the season, but really kicked it off in that second half. It was kind of after when Brian Gutekunst had his presser and said, "Hey, these are big Final 10 games for Jordan Love," and Jordan Love responded. No question about it, he responded, and he finished off the season pretty darn good. I mean, was, in my opinion, and I get it, the voting was done beforehand and whatever, but Pro Bowl numbers. Finished the season 64.2% completion percentage, 4,159 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, 11 interceptions, 96.1 rating. Now, I think there's a good chunk of fans or some people. Now, some people are already, ready to drink the Kool-Aid. Mike Tannenbaum, former general manager. I mean, he's been on this train all offseason, saying he'd pick him second overall behind Patrick Mahomes of all the quarterbacks to put on his team. But I think there's still some maybe question marks like, okay, we saw a little bit of it last year. We saw it for second half of the season, 10 games or so from Jordan Love. Maybe there's still some people out there not ready to drink the full glass, the full cup of the Kool-Aid of Jordan Love. Like, okay, I want to see it again. Want to see it again for another year, for this year, just before I fully jump on board. And I get it, and I understand that. But I think, heading into this camp, heading into this season and preseason, it's a different type of feel for Jordan Love. One, I think there's still going to be pressure on him, but maybe not as much pressure as last year. I mean, last year, it's your first year, and you got a year to prove yourself, and you're replacing a legend and a Hall of Famer and that. So I mean, there was, and then you got, you're rewarded with a bunch of youngsters. Yes, you had a little time with Romeo and Christian Watson the year before, but then you have some rookie tight ends, and you got a couple other rookie wide receivers in that. And this year, at least, you offensively, you get to hit the ground running instead of working on a lot of installs and guys still getting acclimated to the offense and the playbook and all that good stuff. You get to hit the ground running a little bit more this year, and that's been noted and that's been talked about. But I think there's a little bit of a different pressure on Jordan Love this year heading into camp. It's that pressure of prove it. Like, prove that the final second half of the season, the last 10 games, the postseason, those stretch of games, prove it wasn't a fluke. Prove it wasn't a flash in the pan. You got a lot of people singing your praises right now, especially if he does get that contract, if he gets that big contract. You got a lot of people singing your praises right now. Go out there and prove them right. Or go out there and prove some of the naysayers like, yeah, we need to see a little bit more. We need to see a consistency there. Prove those guys wrong. So last year there was that pressure of like, can you be the guy? Can you be that dude to lead the franchise? Can you be that next quarterback, that third straight quarterback that's pretty darn special? And there was a little inconsistency, a little bit of a slow start at the beginning. But then you proved it for those last handful of games, that last stretch of the season. You led your team to the postseason. You were nearly a few plays away from going to the NFC Championship game in your first year as a starter. It's a different type of pressure this camp, this year for Love. It's more of like, repeat it or maybe even take another further step. Like, okay, just prove it to us that it wasn't just a fluke. There's going to be that. There's still some, and I get it, there's still some questions like, okay, is what we saw from last year, is that what we should expect from Jordan Love for the next 10 years? Is it I'll use this comparison, a Daniel Jones-esque, because I've seen that being floated out there. Where it's like, hey, great year, 2 years ago when he led the Giants to the postseason, beat the Vikings in the postseason, and then last year it was like, bleh. And, for me, for Love too, it's, okay, you've got a lot of those writers, talking heads out there, loving you, praising you, saying you're one of the best in the league right now. It's a different switch from last year. Don't get caught up reading those headlines. Don't get complacent. Right? I want him to kind of still play maybe with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, still something to go out there and prove. I mean, you haven't won anything yet. It's still early in your career, but you haven't won that championship. You haven't brought a Super Bowl back to Titletown. So you still got something to prove, but you're getting more attention now. It's a little bit of a different attention from last year. It was like, first new starter, replacing Aaron and blah, 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 blah. Now it's like, one of the better ones in the league now. It's a different type of attention. How does he react to that? How does he feed off that? How does he, and I think too, this has got to be a year for Jordan Love to develop more as a leader. You don't have Aaron Jones in that locker room anymore. You lost a big leadership person, role with Aaron Jones gone. To me, Jordan's got to be probably number one in terms of like stepping in and filling that leadership role on this team. I mean, it starts with the quarterback. When you talk about leaderships, you kind of always look at the quarterback position, and rightfully so. So I want to see him step up more into that. And not to say he wasn't a leader by any means or anything like that, but I think you can always get better as a leader, and you can always do a little bit more. And what's going to be his leadership style? Because I think you can lead in different ways. I think you have to lead in different ways. Everybody's different. Some respond to the rah-rah speech, pump up sort of thing. Some respond with, maybe a little bit more of a positive reinforcement. I think the job of the quarterback is to understand how different players on your team respond to leadership. Does that guy, does he just need an extra boost here? Does the other guy respond well to, maybe getting in his face and trying to pump him up or something like that? I think that's the role of a quarterback, is to understand that, to have that pulse on your team there. But I think, okay, he showed what he can do as a player on the field last year. Now let's see him continue to grow in the locker room, continue to grow as a leader. That stuff that we may not see all the time on the television or at games, because this is still a fairly young team. Still an incredibly young team. He's got to be the leader. He's got to be the leader on the offensive side here too, especially with Aaron Jones out. No David Bakhtiari even roaming on the sidelines. Jordan Love's got to be that guy to lead this ball club. And I think, when we look at last year, what was some of the weaknesses of Jordan Love? Was it at the beginning of the year in training camp? What was a lot of the talk about some of his areas that he needed to improve on? The deep ball, right? The accuracy with the deep ball. He's got the arm, but it was just the accuracy. It had to get better, and we saw that kind of roll into the season, beginning part of the season and such. But are we going to see improvements from some of his weaknesses from last year? Are we going to see, more consistency when it comes to the deep ball? Are we going to see, some of those throws where he's thrown off the back foot or whatever? Are we going to see situational football, situational plays? Are we going to see an improvement from that aspect? Yes, you go back to the postseason game against the 49ers, thrown across your body, and that final drive, you throw an interception. Improve on stuff like that. You would think, and it's not to say they're going to be 100% perfect, because even the greats and the best still have hiccups and such, but learning from your mistakes from last year to improve this year and going forward. Will he get better? Will he continue to get better? You want to see that continued growth from Jordan Love. So I think it's a different type of pressure to kind of wrap it up here. It's a different type of pressure for Love this year in terms of like, okay, you showed us a lot last year. You showed us some good stuff. Now it's like, prove it again. It's like, prove it that wasn't a fluke. Prove it that it wasn't, just a little bit of a hot streak or whatever. Because there's still going to be doubters. There's still going to be people out there saying, yeah, we need to see more. And especially, too, if he does get that contract, which I think he will get the contract before the season starts, there's going to be that added extra pressure on him, too. Like, prove your worth for that contract. Because I think a lot of people from a fan's perspective, there may still be some out there, and maybe quite a bit, that like, I don't know if I'd give him a big deal right away. I want to see a little bit more. I just want to see a little bit more. And I get that. I understand why there are people who feel that way, want to see that. But I feel like he's going to get that contract. So there's going to be that added extra pressure on his shoulders. Like, all right, dude, you're getting paid the big bucks as one of the top quarterbacks in the league now. How do you handle that type of pressure? And let's face it, too. Defensive coordinators got a year of film on him. They got to study him a little bit more. They had a whole offseason to put on the tape and study him a little bit more. How does Jordan react to that? Again, going back to the weaknesses. How did the weaknesses that he flashed last year, some of the stuff that he needs to improve on, is he going to be able to do that this year? Can't catch anybody off guard this year with your play because you proved that you could be a pretty darn good quarterback. I'm excited to see growth again from Jordan Love. How does he continue to get better? How does this offense continue to get better? And that's kind of where my last storyline heading into this thing is going to be is the receivers, tight ends. We'll just call them the pass catchers. Because if it's not Jeff Hafley that has been talked about with this new defense, if it's not Jordan Love that has been talked about this all offseason, perhaps the third most talked about topic with this Packers team all offseason has been they don't have a number one wide receiver. Do they need a number one wide receiver? Who's going to be that number one wide receiver to step up this year? Then you got, they don't need one. We'd rather have all hands on deck, spread the ball out, this, that, all, it's been a topic of conversation all offseason. Probably a top 3 topic of conversation. Whether it's been from Packers fans, whether it's been from the Packers themselves or the talking heads out there. And we get why. We look at last year. You have a quarterback that throws for over 4,000 yards and no receiver that went over 1,000. A rookie led your team in receiving last year. Jayden Reed. I think, and we've talked about him a little bit early on, this is a big year for Christian Watson heading into his third year. We've seen the glimpses that he can be a big play threat. I think there's a majority, not all, but a majority of people believe if there's going to be a guy that develops into a number one wideout for this team, they feel like it could be Christian Watson. The key is, can he stay healthy? Can he stay healthy? If he can stay healthy, we've seen him be a special player. But I think this is a big year for him entering that third year. Just show us you can stay healthy. Show us you can stay consistent. Show us you can be that big play threat. Romeo Doubs has been just kind of Mr. Consistent, a very good red zone threat. Is it not saying he's this guy or going to be this guy? It almost feels like he's kind of like a Chris Carter-esque. All I do is catch touchdowns sort of thing. Is it the biggest guy? Is it the fastest guy out there? He's a fantastic route runner, and he's got some great hands. So how does Romeo Doubs continue to... Can he take his game up another level? What does Jayden Reed have in store for us in year 2? Saw him last year. A lot of good games. Showed off his athletic ability. I think he's a guy. I know everybody kind of talks about him as a slot guy, and I get it. But I think he's a guy, too, that proved he could play on the outside. And then Dontavian Wicks. Dontavian Wicks is perhaps the one receiver that is maybe getting the most hype. Getting all the attention. Like, watch out for this dude. You got Jordan Love saying the same thing. Watch out for this dude. Last year when he was a draft pick, mid-round pick, like, oh, okay, yeah. intrigued with him. But, I mean, you've got people talking about, okay, maybe this is the dude that could be the number one. This is the dude that could be really special within this offense. So, what does he have in store for year two? Because, and I'm not saying it happens for everybody, we've seen receivers when it comes to year two where it's like, do they take a little bit of a step back? Because then that's that overreaction part we get a lot from fans. It came with Davante Adams, year two, banged up, didn't have the greatest of year. People are like, what is going on with Davante? Get him out of here. Yeah. We've seen that with year two. We've seen that with the sophomores for a lot of these guys in the league, but it seems like especially on receivers. So that's where it's like, I'm looking at Reed and I'm looking at Dontavian Wicks. It's like, will they hit a sophomore slump? Or can they elevate their game and really kind of prove like, hey, you know what? Maybe we're the number one or maybe the number two type of receivers over there. Yes, I mean, as a fan, I would love to see them continue to spread the ball out, them continue to get everybody catches out there, kind of similar to last year. Now, I still kind of feel like that it might just naturally develop that one guy could be the number one wide receiver that could develop into that number one target. I don't think they're necessarily going to force anybody into that role or try to force anybody into that role. But I wouldn't be surprised if somebody just kind of naturally develops into that. It's like this dude just continues to get open and this dude just continues to make plays. And it just kind of naturally goes that way. I feel like that could be the possibility there. So, I mean, there's no doubt this receiving core is uber talented, all the potential in the world, and I don't even think they've hit that potential yet. They don't maybe have the biggest names out there. It's not that 2011, 2012, whatever cover it was on Sports Illustrated. I've got it. You got Aaron, and then you got his 6 pass catchers of Jordy, Greg, Driver, Jones, Cobby, Finley. They were well known. They were name guys out there. They're not to this level yet. But maybe this is the year where they get to that level. And that includes the tight ends. Musgrave, Tucker Kraft. I can't wait to see these two guys. I think when it comes to the tight ends, it's a little bit opposite of maybe some of the wide receivers. When you look at it historically with some of the top tight ends in the game or that we've seen in the last few years, it's those year two jumps. The first year, their rookie years, they get acclimated a little bit to the NFL game, to the style there. But we've seen tight ends really take a jump in year two. And that's where I'm looking at Musgrave and Tucker Kraft. I'm like, okay, we saw some glimpses last year. We saw some good stuff. Musgrave got the first shot. He got hurt. Tucker Kraft filled in nicely. Now, these two guys with a year under their belt, what else do we got in store? Can they take that year two jump that we've seen a lot of the good tight ends in this league take? I'm for all the talk, and I get it and I understand it, for all of the talk about the wide receivers this offseason, don't forget about the tight ends. Don't forget about these two guys. Because I think you could potentially see these two guys, maybe they're the ones that develop into the number one options. If there's going to be that natural development of a number one option, maybe it's Musgrave. Maybe it's Kraft. And who cares if it's a tight end and not a wide receiver? Works pretty darn well for the Chiefs. Works pretty well for the Patriots with Gronk. Who cares if it's not a wide receiver as the number one target? If it's one of those tight ends, I'm okay with that. There's no rule, there's no law that says the number one pass catcher has to be a wideout. So don't forget about those two guys there. I think year two is going to be something to watch with those two guys. Can they, because it's been a while, right? I mean, it's been a while since we talked about a consistent, a really, really good tight end for Green Bay. I mean, from athletic, skill, talent perspective. Jermichael Finley, maybe the last one. You know, Finley, too, we would talk about that year 2 type of jump, and that's where I'll go. He's an example of that. 2008 was his rookie year. He played 14 games, only started 1, but, 12 targets, 6 catches, 74 yards. He had a touchdown. Nothing to brag home about. 2009. Okay, 2009. That was kind of his, he really kind of showed, what he could potentially do. What he could do out there. In 2009, 13 games, 676 receiving yards, 5 touchdowns. And remember that playoff game against the Cardinals? I mean, Finley was having himself a game. He was having himself a game. And I remember reading this too. It was Mike McCarthy talked about heading into that Super Bowl year, the 2010. Yeah, it was, first of all, that Cardinals game, 6 catches, 159 yards. And it was that season, after that season, they went into 2010 kind of like, okay, we're going to really focus on tight end. We're going to make Jermichael Finley a target. We're going to make him a number 1 target. That's our guy too. And then, obviously he got hurt. Only played 5 games, and they adjusted. And then that's when you saw the really breakouts of a Jordy, Jennings and those receivers and Jones and all that. But you see that year 2 jump of Finley, 74 yards, up to 676. Same thing that happened with Kelsey and these other tight ends. But that's the example. That's why I'm excited to see Musgrave and Kraft in these year 2 jumps. All right, that is going to do it for us on this episode of the Man Cave Podcast, brought to you by our good friends from Hy-Vee and Toyson Ford. And again, don't forget to check out that Swag Cave by Resonance Branding Company. You get the link in the podcast description. Until next time, I'm Dan Casper, and I will talk to you on the next episode of the Man Cave Podcast.